Thank you, Gerald. My name is David Wright. I'm a fourth-generation rancher down in Neely, Nebraska, which is 200 miles catty-corner from North Platte across the state. And I'm an Old Testament nut, so I got to say this before we go any further. John and John. Gideon surrounded the army with pots of clay with fire in them, broke the pots full of clay, yelled and screamed, and the enemies killed themselves. Gideon, or Jehoshaphat, said, "What do I do?" You're right, they entered first, but what did they enter with? The choir. The choir singing praises to God, and what they do? But the generals turn to each other and kill each other. So the point is, he'll let you destroy yourself if you want to, because he will. That's what he did to the enemies. So, so anyway, hopefully, I want to show you something. In Nebraska, we elect our representatives to the Nebraska Beef Council, which is the state beef council. We're the only state in the country that elects them. I was asked to run for office, and I did not want to. Man, I avoided it like the plague, because I didn't want anything to do with it. We had to go get 150 signatures to get our name on the ballot to get elected. I waited till the last 2 weeks to get my name on the ballot. That's how much I didn't want to do it. And I got elected. I got elected over Nebraska Cattlemen's. Well, today he's their president, but 8 years ago he wasn't their president. But I got elected over him. And then 4 years later I ran, I got re-elected. And both times I ran, I said I'm opposed to the checkoff, and something's got to change, and both times I got elected, overwhelmingly. Then 2 years ago, my term was up, my 8 years were up at Nebraska, and I got nominated to the Cattlemen's Beef Board. And I've been there for 2 years, I have 1 more year, and I don't really know that I want to do another term. But hopefully I'm going to enlighten you a little bit on the checkoff. What I'm showing you here is the attorney for the Cattlemen's Beef Board is the individual that wrote the checkoff that we have today. It's his baby. He's the one that defended it in the Supreme Court, it's his. And I've been on his case for the past 2 years, well actually for the past 8 years, about the merger of NCBA and how the Federation, which is all the state beef councils, and NCBA doesn't really exist because it didn't exist prior to the formation of the checkoff, but yet they win the contract. So in response, last year, he came up with this PowerPoint, and he sprung this on us at the dinner. And he marched back and forth in front of me as he gave it, and like I was prepared to step up and respond. But I've come up with a response, so I hope you enjoy it. So I'll be quick. This is history of the checkoff. We all think the checkoff the checkoff we have today started in 1988. It didn't, it started in 1975. 75, the Senate had a bill, the House had 6 bills. This one passed, that one passed, but they had to go to conference to get it all straightened out. So they go to conference and they get it all straightened out. And here's some of the things that they come up with in April of 1976. One of them was that the rate would be 0.5% of what it sold for. There was fines of from 1,000 to 100,000, and what it was just a convoluted law. That was 1976. That is the first checkoff. See, it was signed into law in 1976, and we had a vote on that mess. That's what the vote was. So we had a vote, and the vote was, we had a referendum, and in order for it to pass, they wanted a supermajority. It had to have had to have 2/3 to pass. 50% of the registered, and then 50% of the registered producers cast the vote. Approval was had to be by 2/3. Approval was only 57%, so the referendum failed. And that vote was taken at the county extension office. Now you need to remember this stuff. These things I'm going to show you here. County extension office, 2/3. So they went back. Did I do that?
It's a powerful.
Well, you never know about this electronic stuff. These things, you know. So they went back and they tried another referendum in 1980. And this time, instead of having 2/3 a supermajority, they changed the protocol and said, we just want a simple majority. See how they're trying to change it so they can get it to pass? A simple majority, and they only had 35% voted in favor of it. And again, it was taken at the county extension office. So it failed. But notice, Notice the lawyer didn't put county extension office on there anywhere. Did you notice that? Right, so then 1985, they went back and they said, listen, this thing's, the reason it's not passing is because it's a convoluted law. So they changed it. They changed it from 0.5% to just $1. They created the operating committee, which is 10 people on the federation, which is your state beef councils, and 10 people on the Cattlemen's Beef Board. And those 20 people decide where those dollars get spent. That's the final word, the operating committee. So those were the points that they changed. The old law had members nominated by qualified state beef councils. The new law has members nominated by qualified state organizations, which is strictly defined. Okay? The old law had a rate of 0.5%. The new law had $1, and 50 cents stayed with the beef councils. 50 cents went to the CBB. The old law, the beef board was responsible in all aspects. The new law said the operating committee is responsible. That's 10 and 10. The new law, 50% of the registered voters were required to cast votes. The new referendum said the referendum must be passed by a simple majority. Or the old law, the new one said must be passed by 50% of the voters in the referendum, lowering the requirement. Look how he said that. They keep lowering the requirements until they get it passed like they want. 1988, we had a referendum and it passed 79%. It was taken at the ASCS office, not the extension. Do you know why? Because they slipped it into the Farm Bill. And since it was in the Farm Bill, USDA wanted to be responsible to control the votes. Now, I don't know about you people, but in Nebraska, I don't ever go to the ASCS office. I'm a rancher. I go to the county extension agent. I never know no business in the ASCS office. So it passes. So then here's a list of definitions of the qualified beef councils. All right, in 1990, from 86 to 96, the National Beef, it says Beef Board, Livestock, National Livestock, and Meats Board, and National Cattlemen's Association worked through organization relationships. Because what they're complaining about is the Beef Board is who's got the dollars, the National Livestock and Meats Board is a contractor, and National Cattlemen's is also a contractor. So all of a sudden there's this complaining going on, oh, we're duplicating the process. You know, we got monies that are being duplicated rather than being spent efficiently. So the state beef councils got in the middle, you know, they're in the middle of the fighting that's going on because all this duplication, supposedly, that's going on. So they come up with this great idea, let's have a merger. This is according to this attorney. They had the merger, which formed NCBA. And what that did was it took the National Livestock and Meats Board and it took the National Cattlemen's Association and it merged them. And the Federation, which was part of the National Livestock and Meats Board, became part of NCBA. And the CBB stayed out of the merger because it was a government, a quasi-government entity. So now we have a merger, we have one voice. You like that? One voice for your checkoff dollars. One plan, one long-range plan. Everybody get on the same page because these guys have the one voice. Right? Challenges to the act. The First Amendment, government speech. This was the constitutionality of it. As you know, the government upheld it as being government speech. The industry landscape is changing. There's several voices, he says now, you know. Darn, you damn I'm sorry, you darn dissenters. You darn dissenters are standing up and saying something instead of just marching lock, stock, and barrel with NCBA. Increased scrutiny over NCBA's mishandling of the funds. I'm not supposed to say that. I'm on the Cattlemen's Beef Board because Forrest Roberts has told me that he will sue us. He will sue anybody who says that he misappropriated. So I suggested to him that if he didn't misappropriate it, then he's incapable of running the programs, which he didn't think was very funny. Okay, then the task force come out. These are the recommendations. And NCBA or CBB recommended changes to the beef checkoff. The NCBA's fighting those tooth and nail. And his guiding principles at the end, it says we need to work between the CBB and the beef councils, utilize the programs, recognize the industry landscape, need to protect the checkoff as an industry asset. And these are the groups that are involved now, according to the lawyer. And that is the end of his presentation. So I wanted to share that with you before, I got to tell you, when I give this presentation down in Kansas at KCA, and I got a letter from the chairman of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and he told me to cease and desist, or they kicked me off the board. Because he said, you're telling people not to pay the check off. Well, I wasn't telling people not to pay the check off. If you read the act and the order, it says right in it in plain English, the buyer is responsible to remit. And that's all I said. And these guys from Kansas ran to the CBB saying, Dave Wright's telling people they don't have to pay. I didn't say that. I said the seller doesn't remit. The buyer has to remit. And if you read the act and order, you'll see there's a long list of things that the buyers have to do. They have to fill out forms and create receipts and just a litany of stuff to make sure that it's correct. We kind of wash that to the side, put that off on the sale barns to do that. The buyer doesn't do it. So, this is my response. And I got most of this information, are you ready for this? From NCBA's website. And from John Houston, who used to be in charge of the National Livestock and Meats Board. So I remember they took you back to 1976. I'm going to take you back to 1919. In 1919, we had the consent decree. If you've ever heard Mike, I've heard him talk about the consent decree. But the consent decree tells the packers that they have to sell their interest in stockyards, warehouses, wholesale, and retail meat, because the 5 packers at that time had control. They had a lock, stranglehold on rail cars, on publications. They had a hold on everything. So this was the consent decree, and those packers voluntarily signed this because they knew Congress was working on something. 1921, we got the Packers and Stockyard Act, and you've heard Bill talk about the things that are in the Packers and Stockyard Act. In 1922 is when the checkoff began. The first checkoff was 5 cents per carload. There was 25 head in a load. The packers matched the 5 cents. It's voluntary. The assessment is collected at the markets. The assessment is refundable, so you've got to ask to get your money back. But it was collected at the markets. That first year, they collected $70,000. And so they got this money, they got to figure out how to administrate it. So, is it Thomas Wilson or Wilson Thomas? How do you say it? Thomas Wilson. Thomas Wilson comes up with the idea of the National Livestock Meats Board. It's formed to administrate the checkoff. And it embodies all the species. It embodies pork, or beef, pork, and lamb. Because they're all paying this. In 1931, there was an increase to 25 cents a carload. In 1953, it increased to 2 cents per head. Now remember, it's refundable. You got to ask for it back. In 1955, the National Beef Council was formed. And this was formed by Texas Farm Bureau. They led the way to form the National Beef Council. And it consisted of 17 state beef councils were formed to help support it. Those state beef councils and the state beef councils and the producers voluntarily paid to make it work. Voluntarily. While the National Livestock and Meats Board is still collecting theirs, but it's refundable, you have to ask for it. In 1962, there was an increase of 3 cents per head. In 1963, the National Beef Council goes broke.